A reading from the Gospel according to Matthew. Now when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi and asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" They said, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." And he said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" And Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. And the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. And I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." And then he sternly ordered the disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. From that time on, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and undergo great suffering at the hands of the elders and the chief priests and scribes, and to be killed, and on the third day be raised. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, "God forbid it, Lord, this must never happen to you." But he turned to Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." The word of the Lord. I love this story about Jesus and Peter's interactions. Partly for many reasons. I love the whole play on words. I love the whole idea of Simon being named Peter, Petros, meaning the rock. Literally, it's a Jesus play on words here. I'm going to name you the rock because you are the rock on which I will build my church. And why does Jesus do that with Peter? Seemingly because Peter is the one who gets it, who recognizes him as the Messiah when others around are still trying to figure it out. But if he's so happy with Peter having figured out he's the Messiah, then why does he tell everybody, "But don't tell anyone, keep it a secret"? Shouldn't he want it to be shared? And if Peter is so great, why does not mere moments after Peter being told he's so great that he'll be the rock upon which this church will be built, then he immediately gets onto Jesus' bad side, and Jesus is now calling him a different kind of a rock, a stumbling block upon which people will trip over. And simply for nothing else other than that he doesn't want Jesus to die. So this is a fascinating story. And I think the thing I love about it most is if we're thinking about the idea of what is it that Jesus saw in Peter, and what does that tell us? I think it's important to understand what Jesus saw in Peter is not necessarily anybody of any superhuman ability. He wasn't that special. He was a fisherman. Peter, by all accounts, doesn't seem like he was brilliant. He does all sorts of things that are questionable throughout the Gospels. It's certainly never because he gets it always right. So what did Jesus see in Peter? Well, I think what Jesus saw in Peter is somebody who was striving to understand God's will. What brought his attention to Peter particularly and said, "You're the rock on which I will build my church," was not that Peter was better than anybody else, but that he was striving to discern God's will. And he saw it in Jesus. And Jesus looked at him and said, here's something I can work with. Here's something I can build this church upon. And it didn't mean he wouldn't always get it right. And in the church, we don't always get it right. There have been plenty of times in which we have built up, and there have been plenty of times in which we have been stumbling blocks or stumbling rocks for people. I think the thing that we should be striving to do, like Peter did, was to keep listening, to keep discerning. It doesn't mean we'll always get it right. We're not asked to always get it right. Peter wasn't asked to always get it right. But he kept trying, and he kept listening, even when he got it wrong. And that's what we need to do, is we need to keep trying. We need to keep listening. God is calling. God is pointing us the way. Jesus is there, leading the way. Are we going to keep trying to listen? And it doesn't mean we won't stumble, and it doesn't mean we won't stumble, we cause other people to stumble along the way. And if it sounds like I'm just saying this over and over again, it's because it's a reiterative process that we never stop trying to do. We will never stop getting it wrong. We'll never stop, keep trying. And we'll get it right some of the times, and it'll draw us closer to God, and we'll never be perfect. But it's this process that we live into that's what builds the church. And if we're doing that, then we are trying to live just as Peter lived in this moment. And while Jesus had to shake his head at Peter sometimes and be like, Peter, I don't know what I'm going to do with you. At the end of the day, it is through people like Peter and hopefully people like us that the church is built and draws people closer to God. Amen.